Welcome to another exciting episode of the Lobster Talks Y Combinator Secrets by Lobster Capital. Venture capital is evolving faster than ever, and today we're diving headfirst into the new trends and opportunities that are shaping the future of investing. For those who are new here, I'm Gabriel Jarrosson. I'm your host. Welcome to the show. I've seen firsthand the transformative power of innovation and the incredible potential of the Y Combinator ecosystem, and I'm excited to talk about it today.
Yes. Hi, Gabriel. Let's start with the latest news from YC. So the upcoming demo day is just around the corners. What are emerging industries are you most excited about in the S24 batch? Any standouts?
Yes, so Demo Day is around the corner, maybe already gone when this is published, but as for the previous batches for the last, year and a half, the most represented industry in the current batch is AI. Now, when you say that, having said that, you haven't said much because AI now comes into many, many shapes and forms. And so there's a lot of different flavors of AI. At the beginning, November 2022, I believe, was when ChatGPT was released. And so early 2023, you had all of those startups that were what we call GPT wrappers. That was the name at the time, where you don't necessarily bring a lot of value. You do just like ChatGPT, going a little bit further. And so, of course, since then, GPT has released a lot of updates, including one very recently. And so your company could potentially be in big trouble if you're doing the same thing. But that was the very early days. And I've actually criticized that on a blog post that I wrote in 2023 saying why I'm not investing in AI. It was at the time. Today, things have changed massively, and I am investing in AI. And so you see the startup founders becoming smarter about what to start as a business, not just a wrapper. You also see, in my opinion, Y Combinator becoming smarter or about what they select, or not smarter, because YC, I've always believed YC is already some very, very smart people, but they're becoming more experienced about what they want, what they like, and what could work and what could have an impact. So you see a lot of YC companies now building AI, for example, for old industries. If there's a very old industry, I'll take an example, very simple. There's a lot of YC companies building AI for construction. Construction has been around for millenniums, literally, and technology is helping it evolve. And so there's a lot of documentation involved in building something, and AI is very good with documents. So that's one case. Or there's a lot of sourcing and procurement for materials, and that's also something that AI can do. So that's just for construction, but you have all of those, call it legacy industries, where AI is not yet implemented, and where there are a lot of things that those companies can do. So that's one type of AI that could potentially be interesting. The other kind is new use cases created by AI. And again, now we see some YC companies that really drive usage by end users, really have adoption. And so they really actually drive value. I'll give you an example. There's a company in the batch called Video Gen, where one person full time is able to generate videos with an AI help as much as a full team of 5 to 8 people. And so the gains in terms of productivity and the time that you have to spend are huge. And it's not just, by the way, when I say Video Gen, it's not just a tool to put, I want to see a video of an elephant in the snow, and it gives you this video. It's actually a full set of editing tool that allows you to go from start to finish on a video with the script, with the voice, with the videos themselves, etc. So it's a complete tool. It's not a toy anymore. AI started with toys where you can generate an image, but now it's actually professional tools that you can use for your work. And so again, those types of companies where they solve a real problem, they make your life easier, they allow people to work faster with less employees potentially, and actually make money doing it. That's the case for Video Gen. It's making quite a lot of money, actually. Well, I love that. I love that when there's a real use case. So that's sort of my little update on AI. And again, that's why there's AI and there's AI. Just like I said, there's YC and there's YC. There's a lot of different companies inside YC. There's a lot of different AI companies. So don't throw everything out. I've been last year, early 2023, very cautious about AI. Don't invest on just anything just because it has the word AI on it. But still being very cautious, you now find some very, very interesting use cases, including in the current YC batch. And this I'm excited about.
Mhm. And yeah, you've shared some interesting news about YC and their decision to go to 4 batches a year. And why do you think this is a positive development? And how do you think this will shake things up in Lobster Capital?
Yeah. So YC announced last week or 2 weeks ago, probably now, that they're moving to 4 batches a year. And so what they said is it's going to be smaller batches. So before, up to today, there were 2 batches per year, summer and winter. And the latest numbers was they would have roughly 250 startups per batch. So that's 500 per year. So that's pretty big batches, right? 250 startups in the same batch. And every startup usually has 2, maybe 3 founders. So that's a lot of people. And so what they said is they're going to keep at 500 startups per year, but divide that into 4 batches every quarter. Every quarter, there's going to be a smaller batch that instead of 250 should be 125, roughly, startups, maybe 120, 130, something like this. It is a question for me whether they're going to stay at this small number or if they're going to, years in and years out, after a few times, a few iterations, if they're going to increase each batch's size back to 250 per batch, but 4 times a year. This would bring a total of 1,000 companies per year instead of 500. That's the question mark for me at this point, but that's not what they said. They said we're going to make the batches smaller. And if you think about it, that's an absolute positive because today, most group partners have around 20 companies that they take care of personally per batch. So if you divide the size by half, you should probably have each group partner having only 10 companies. Mm-hmm. And so each company would have much more time with their group partner to talk with them, to get the help, to get the mentorship, because this is what YC is about. So they should have a better quality mentorship, most likely from those group partners. So that's already a positive. Another positive is that there's going to be a much more distributed media attention. And I don't talk only about traditional media. There's also Hacker News, which is a tool that belongs to YC, where companies publish their launch, they publish what they're building. But the problem is because you have 250 companies building exactly at the same time, during those months, Hacker News is going crazy. And then during the down months, it would be much more quiet. And so it's difficult for a YC company to make some noise, to get noticed amongst the noise of everyone else. This is going to be better because you're going to have half as many people that you're competing against. So that's also something that should make everyone's life easier, but mostly the YC companies themselves have more chance getting noticed on Hacker News, on LinkedIn, and by the traditional media itself, because there's quite a decent amount of media covering YC. And then, of course, we have the question of investors like myself. And I believe, again, it's quite a positive because what I've been doing investing in YC for the past 5 years now is there's big moments where sadly not much is happening. And I'm personally still investing in between the batches and the demo days, but you have much less deal flow, you have much less companies. It's mostly older companies from previous batches that you've kept in touch with and that are raising, etc. And then you have a big rush, everyone at the same time, for demo day. And I used to have, out of 250 companies, I would speak to probably 200 of the batch. We have 200 meetings in 2-3 weeks, which is kind of crazy. And also you have, it happened to me several times that you have not necessarily unlimited checks that you can write. Funds, for example, like myself, have capital calls. So you call your money from your investors at different times. So you don't necessarily have, 10 checks that you're ready to write at each given moment. It depends on a number of things. And so having this being more spread out means less meetings at the same time, able to meet more people, probably, able to take a little bit more time, even though Lobster Capital is very quick in its decision making, and that's something that YC founders like. So probably my speed of decision making and getting back to them stays the same, but able to have less meetings crammed into a few weeks, take more time in between meetings to think about everything. And I believe this is positive, and this is going to happen 4 times a year instead of 2 times a year. So every quarter you got a new set of companies that you can invest in. So overall, super, super positive. It's for now the same amount of deal flow, but could very much increase in the future. But it's deal flow that's more evenly distributed over time. And so that's probably much, much better to find the next gems, to work with them so they get better media attention, etc. And there's going to be 4 in-person demo days in San Francisco, which I'm going to attend. And so that's also, twice as much opportunities to meet face to face and to be with the YC team and ask them how we can support the YC startups better, the ecosystem, etc. So overall, it's positive, I believe, for YC. I believe it's a great move. More work for them, but apparently they're not afraid to work, and that's great. We have this in common. Probably more work for Lobster Capital as well, but very, very much a great news. Easier to find gems and potentially more deal flow as well in the future.
Well, it's really something to look forward to the next batch and how it will go. Also, in your LinkedIn post, you also shared a fascinating observation about B2B software and fintech companies in YC's unicorn portfolio. So in the summer 24 batch, there are 164 startups for B2B. Can you elaborate on this trend, and why do you think it's significant and there are a lot of B2B startups in YC this batch?
Yes, that's a great point. And many people have been wondering, is YC becoming only B2B? The first thing I want to mention is that there's 160 B2B, which means there's still 90 B2C. So that's not too bad. It's not like there's 0 B2C. B2C is still here. But, YC is still funding some B2C startups. I'm still funding some B2C startups. So you have some pure B2B SaaS funds and incubators probably, but a lot of people have not renounced or said they're not going to do any B2C anymore. That's not the case. So that's one thing. But like you've mentioned, there's more B2B. Why is that? Well, I believe the answer is probably twofold or threefold. One is, as we've mentioned earlier, there's a big boom in AI right now. People at YC are calling this one of the most impactful technological shift of our generation. And it's probably right. It's very likely that AI is the biggest thing in tech of the last 20 years and maybe of the next 20 years. So, we're not sure yet, but it seems like it today. It's very, very likely that AI, and by the way, there's a lot of people who say, oh, it's an AI bubble, it's going to burst. And there's a lot of very smart people who say that it's not going to burst. And I tend to agree that it's not that much of a bubble and it's not going to burst. Some specific companies have inflated valuation and raised billions, etc. Overall, it's exactly what I was sharing in my first answer a few minutes ago. If AI is solving a real problem, creating value, making money, then it's not a bubble. It's something that people need and are going to keep using forever. So that's why I think there's no bubble. To go back to the YC and the B2B, because we have such a major shift in how everyone works, there's probably a bigger opportunity right now to go use AI in B2B than to create a B2C business. Because in the B2C, in our daily lives, AI doesn't have such a huge impact yet. That's also why some people think there's a bubble. It's because they say, what is this AI thing? I don't use it every day. I go to work, I take the bus or the metro, and there's no AI in the metro. So what is this AI thing? So it's more on the B2B side for companies. And I can tell you that in my business, I use it now almost every day. And that's the case for a lot of people. There's more opportunities right now to go after B2B because it's complex processes, a lot of difficult things to do that AI is really good at, manipulating data on a computer, etc. By the way, there's probably going to be a huge opportunity in B2C as well, but we haven't invented the usage yet. So that's one of the reasons I think why probably there's a little bit more of B2B. The other reason that everybody knows about is that YC in itself is a network or an ecosystem where you can sell a B2B product to other YC companies. I believe now 5,000 companies that have gone through YC from inception. So that's a lot of potential customers. And YC is very geared towards technical founders and technical products, and which is great, which I love. And so there's a lot of founders trying to solve problems for other companies. Let's say you're a YC company from 2-3 years ago, you're growing, but you want to integrate AI into your product, you don't really know how. Comes in a new YC company, hey, we're helping fast growing companies to integrate AI. Boom, that's going to be perfect. And there's this trust, this ease of doing business together in the YC community because you're both from YC. You trust each other very, very much, very easily, and you want to give the company a chance. And you know that this founder or founders have been selected by YC. So you know they're very smart people. You can rely on them and count on them. So because YC is a big community selling stuff to each other, that's why B2B really tends to prevail as well in YC. And there's some people joking that YC companies only sell to YC companies and that's it, which is not true. Most YC companies also sell outside of YC, but it does happen that maybe the first few customers to really give you a shot are other YC companies. So again, that's an advantage of B2B. So that's why you see more B2B in YC. I believe it's always been the case. I believe there's always been a little bit more B2B or many batches, at least in the last years. Very often a little bit more B2B. Some people might argue that B2C is more difficult to succeed because you need to convince people one by one and find a way to get to them, where on B2B you can have a sales motion, a sales cycle. You can, reach out to people and say, hey, here's my solution. Do you want to buy it? Which is harder, arguably, in B2C. But you could also say that B2C successes could potentially be bigger once you have a product like Uber or Airbnb that everybody in the world uses. It could be a very big success as well. To conclude, I'm not discriminating against B2C or B2B. Both are interesting to me, but that's, I guess, the explanation.
Yeah. And I think AI is here to stay. I can't imagine going back to the world where there's no AI. And also, you mentioned about the power of YC's network itself. How does this play a role in the success of these B2C, B2B startup companies? And how does this de-risk the investments or funds like Lobster Capital?
Yeah, that's a great segue. One thing is the YC community will help you find your first customers. Probably, we've established that. But it's very possible that you find your first customers in the YC network as a B2B company, but also as a B2C company, you could very much have founders or people who come and use your product as well. So that's one thing where the YC network really helps. The other is really the ecosystem that's created in the batch itself. So I've interviewed on this very show many YC founders, and I asked them, what's the best about YC? Is it the people that you meet, like meeting Brian Chesky and Patrick Collison, or is it working with the group partners? Actually, what they say is it's the group of entrepreneurs, the group of peers that you're with, and that creates some sort of a peer pressure. It's a positive peer pressure. Because you meet for office hours every week, or I believe it's every 2 weeks, and every time people come back, and it's a group of 20 startups, or sometimes it's 2 groups together, so maybe 40 startups. Everybody says what they're up to, what they've done, what they've built in the last 2 weeks. And you don't want to be the only company that goes on stage and says, well, we haven't succeeded to do much. Nothing has changed. And so there's this very positive peer pressure that sets and says, okay, in 14 days, we're going on stage, and we have to present what we're doing. And so there's a big pressure. And so that's a huge thing that the YC network really helps. And most founders, most YC companies, they keep this alive after YC, after the batch. So many times I've heard, well, we've kept the same group because we know each other and we become friends. And every 2 weeks, we're going to meet. Maybe it's on Zoom. And we're just going to give updates to try to keep the same intensity. And so that's probably the most important thing. Then you, like we talked about, you can find customers. And then you have all this community that's always ready to help. I was also sort of touching on this earlier when I was talking about B2B companies working together. When a YC founder meets another YC founder, they only want to help each other. It's always, how can I help you? How can I pay it forward and just be helpful? And so if you're a YC alumni, if you need anything, you could need, hiring, you can need, maybe you need help with your product on the technical side. Maybe you have a difficult problem with a co-founder that it's not going well, or with an employee, or with an investor. Anything you need to talk about, you need help, you can just ask in the community, and someone is going to be there and take the time to help you. And it always works. And I've heard the story 1,000 times. I needed help with this and this and that, and I posted in the YC community, and someone helped me. And, did you know him? Did you know her? No, someone from the YC network just came and helped me. And that's it. And so this is also invaluable because you have companies of every size at YC. Seed companies, Series A, B, C, Series D. You have pre-IPO, post-IPO companies. And so you have founders who've lived everything. They've gone through it all. 5,000 companies. Everything has happened to them collectively. They have the knowledge. And so anything you need, they're going to help you, including if you want an introduction. Hey, can you connect me with Gabriel from Lobster Capital? I don't know him, but you know him. Sure, I'll connect you. Could be an investor, but could be anyone else. The YC community really has this mentality of paying it forward, of always helping. I try to abide by that mentality as well and just help companies, even including the companies that I'm not investing into. I always really do try to help them and pay it forward. It's a long-term game, right? It's also a reputation game, but it's a long-term game. You're going to be here forever. Maybe this founder of the company, you're not investing in it right now, but maybe in the future it becomes a great company and you could invest. Or he or she starts another company and this one you want to invest into. Or you never invest in that company, but they just speak highly of you to someone else and you invest in them and give you referrals and whatever. It is a small world, Silicon Valley. It is a long-term game. It is a reputational game. It is a game that I'm playing. It also feels good. You just want to be a nice person and just help people, and people like that. And people are thankful and they just smile at you. So it also just is a great thing to do overall. So that those are a few things that the YC ecosystem helps. There's so many more. There's the investor database. So you know who you're talking to as a founder. Is this a good or a bad investor? There is the work at a startup website for hiring. And I was just meeting a couple of days ago here in San Francisco with a company that I've invested in. And they said, we posted this job offer on the work at a startup website. And we got 400 applicants just from this single website, 400 applicants for one position. And so it's actually a little bit too much for him because now he has to filter through all of them. But at least he knows he's going to be able to find the right person, the most qualified for the job. So, there's so many tools, so many things that YC does, but I think, I'll stop there. I think I've touched on most of them.
Yeah. It's a very great experience, I think, if you're in YC, and the network is just amazing. So what are your predictions about the venture capital landscape, especially as it relates to Y Combinator as an asset class? And what do you think are the opportunities for investors in the years to come?
Well, you've mentioned something that I truly believe is that YC is an asset class of itself. The numbers prove this. When you have 5 to 6% unicorn rate out of every YC companies, that's one company out of 20 that goes through YC that becomes a unicorn, which is completely insane. Obviously, those are the numbers for the previous batches. The batch for today, we don't yet know because we don't know the future, but we think that the numbers will very likely hold, if not become better. And so YC is an asset class in itself. Now, the question, I believe, and that's the question that many people think about as well, is it going up or down or staying the same from here? So can we still trust YC? That's what I hear a lot of people asking, like, Is the quality still good? Is it going to give the same results as before? My personal conviction is that it's actually getting better. I've been following YC very closely for many, many years. And I believe there's a lot of people who are working really hard to make YC even better. And I've seen a lot of changes going on in the last years. And I think they're extremely positive. The fact that they're going to 4 batches, we talked about it, I think is also very positive and is going to help. It's not single-handedly thanks to Gary Tan, but he for sure helps as well. And so Gary Tan is back at YC for a year and a half now, almost 2 years. And again, not only him, I don't want to discredit others who work really hard, but Gary really, I believe, I don't know, he hasn't said so to me, but I believe when he came into YC, his first goal or his main goal was like, let's make sure I make YC even better than it is today. Let's make sure that my legacy at YC is to actually improve it and make it even better. And, Gary Tan is a very smart guy. So when he sets his mind to something, so far he's been able to achieve most of what he wanted. And so I believe he's going to achieve this as well. I believe he's going to achieve making YC even better and making YC even more as a separate asset class compared to the rest. And by that, I mean, I believe it's going to be even more interesting and to invest in YC than anywhere else on the planet and give you even better results. Already today, it gives you better results than investing just in startups. Even if you're just investing in Silicon Valley, there's no better numbers. There's no better place to invest than YC. And I believe it's going to become even better. That's why I talk about the YC asset class as an investment. And that's why, obviously, I chose to build Lobster Capital exclusively investing in YC startups. And, I didn't have to do that. I could have Lobster Capital being a Silicon Valley fund or a global fund. I could do whatever I wanted, but I chose to only invest in YC startups. That's because of my conviction that it's an asset class that's outperforming everything else. And also, my conviction doesn't come from nothing. My conviction comes from the numbers that we have, from the proof. I'm an engineer originally, so I'm a scientific guy. I like proof and numbers. I don't do things because I think so. I do things because I have the data and the numbers to prove it. And so the data and the numbers, if you look at them, there's no discussion that YC is great or has been great in the past. Now it's only a matter of, do you believe it's going to continue or not? But when you see what they're doing, and I'm pretty close to it and looking at it very closely, when you see everything they're doing, really see the direction in which it's going. And so my conviction is that it's really going to get better. The batches that we see today, when we will have the data, probably 10 years from now, I believe the data is going to be extremely good and positive. But of course, it would be too late to invest in today's batches. So if you want to have the unicorns of 10 years from now, you have to invest in today's batches. And so that's exactly what I'm doing. And I'm very confident about the future.
Yeah, I like your data-driven approach, and think the future is bright for Lobster Capital.
Thank you for joining us on this amazing episode. As we've talked about, the future of venture capital is bright, and I'm really excited to be part of it. At Lobster Capital, we're not just chasing returns. We're looking for the companies that will shape the world of tomorrow and be the big winners. We believe in the power of YC to produce those game changers, and we're committed to partnering with the most promising founders to help them realize their vision. The best investments aren't just about the numbers, they're about people, passion, and the potential to make a real impact and change the world. At Lobster Capital, we're all about finding those opportunities and turning them into reality. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate us on your favorite podcast app, and see you in the next episode of the Lobster Talks.